Ishwarama's resplendent sun. It's the start of a bright new day. Time to rise, time to shine, Lord divine. Time to lead us along life's way. Awake, Lord of Buddha party. Awake, O Lord, over all mankind. Awake, O Lord of compassion, that the world good fortune may find.
I'm not taping. I'm not miking her. I'm not.
Well,
Do you want her?
yeah, I'll pick her up with the boom, I guess.
Do you want me to mic her? I don't know.
Today, my name is Young Adults. We've heard this Isaac Tigrett speak, but for the Bobby Guys, group of Bobby Guys, right? He is the owner of the Hard Rock Cafe in New York and all over the world. He's a very good speaker. We've heard him twice so far. Yeah, I can just introduce you. Mr. Isaac Tigrett.
You all know the gentleman from Texas? Everywhere you go, every side of it is there. Well, I appreciate y'all let me come and chat, you know, about, I don't know really what to talk about, to tell you the truth. If y'all, anyone here ever been to a Hard Rock Cafe? All right. Well, you know, I grew up in Jackson, Tennessee, a country town, you know, halfway between Nashville and Memphis. And I mean, it was really a country town, and I couldn't wait to get away. It was really important that I got out of town. And I guess when I was about 14 or 15, I moved to England. And my dad and mother were divorced, and my dad went over there to live, so I went over there and started hanging out in England. And it was really an exciting time. This was the late 60s, and there was lots of things happening. It was a little different from now, because all the young people then, it was a revolutionary period of time. It seems like today so much is based on fashion, as opposed to the political revolution that was going on at that particular time. But it was part of that revolution was music, and it's really these days the advent of the Beatles and the Rolling Stones and all those type of groups. Say so became the platform, you know, for protest and what was happening. It's different today. You know, rock and roll to a certain degree is not as cool as it was. It's rock and roll was the thing. It was cutting edge, it was alternative lifestyle, it was protest. I guess it was the mid-'80s when suddenly advertisers, you know, started jumping on advertising the products, and rock and roll sort of went mainstream. It became not as cool as it was. In fact, protest music really belongs to rap music today, because that's a real thing that's happening. There's 40 million people living in the inner cities in America, you know, who are living in sort of a social hell. Los Angeles is, what happened out there recently is a byproduct of that hell. And rap music really is more protest music of today. I think that rap music is even going to be destroyed by advertising and all that sort of thing. But music is important. Music has been one of the things that has bound generations upon generations together. In my generation, in fact, the name hard rock really came, it was a new word in the culture. It referred to the music that Jimi Hendrix was playing, the music that groups like Led Zeppelin and that sort of music was called hard rock. It was pretty strong electric music, and that's where the name came from for the business. And it was really exciting because the next thing I knew, I was 19 when I started the project, and it took me about 2 years to get together. I sold an old Rolls-Royce car I bought in England for like $1,000. I took it over to the States, and took it off the boat. The guy offered me $20,000, like 20 times what I had paid for it. And it was really mind-blowing. I had worked in these factories in England, these Victorian factories. I never graduated from high school. I was a rebellious type of character. In fact, that was about 75 pounds ago. And my hair was about down to here. It was really amazing actually to work in these factories in the north of England. People were getting paid. I think I made 17 pounds a week, 17 English pounds. It was about $2 a pound at the time. And it was exciting. I spent that 2 years. I pumped beer in a pub for bed and breakfast after I came home from work. And it was that money that allowed me to save my money to buy this old car. Anyway, I took it over and sold it, and I went and got that 2 or 3 more. I discovered a little window in a market. I discovered how to make money, which I never dreamed I'd ever make, especially after working 2 years in these factories in north of England. Women were being paid half of what men were being paid for the same job at that particular time. This is 1966, 67, something like that. Times have changed a little bit. Things have gotten a bit better for women. So in those days, it was really, really interesting what was going on. It was, I guess, took me about 18 months to bring those cars over, and I made enough money to start the hardware. First, I financed all my friends because they didn't have any money. And they were all my age, and I was so embarrassed to have the money because the main thing it did for me, it made me free of my parents. One of the most exciting aspects of it. Parents are, they're always worrying about you, your job, but eventually it gets a little difficult. Anyway, the story of the hard rock is wild. I opened this business in June 14th, 1971 on Hyde Park Corner in London. I was motivated by some pretty strange revolutionary thoughts. I had come from Tennessee, and we had just gone through this whole civil rights thing. And I was in several civil rights marches. I was, especially coming from Tennessee, we had lots of riots and things that went down. And the social injustice was so obvious. It really flamed me. And that's one of the reasons that my parents were happy that I went to England, is when they let me get out of town. And when I went to England, I discovered something equally as bizarre. I lived in a place called Mayfair. It's right in the middle of the high rent district. And in Mayfair, England is divided into class systems, which it's sort of like the caste system in India. It's really bizarre. If you were from the east end of London, you weren't allowed to walk in Mayfair. You couldn't shop there. You couldn't hang out there. I couldn't believe it when I saw Bobby telling a guy from the East End, "Hey mate, what are you doing in this part of town? Move off." It outraged me once again. It was so strange that here I just come from the South, where they'd gone through this whole civil rights thing, and suddenly I discovered something called the class system in England. And what motivated me was hard rock. In those days, a baker and a banker weren't allowed in the same restaurant together. It just wasn't done. Everybody had their section of town. Everybody had their pubs that they went into. It was so bizarre that that's what was going down. And the idea of doing the hard rock in those revolutionary times was I wanted to open the first classless restaurant in England. place where a baker and a banker could hang out. The thing that made it actually work, and the thing I did accomplish, it was doing that. First I had to get a site that was really so I could thumb in the eye of the establishment. So I decided to cross from Buckingham Palace right in the middle of Mayfair was the perfect place to be. And that's when we opened on Hyde Park Corner. And the scene was so powerful because as soon as we opened the place, the Beatles were hanging out in there, and the Rolling Stones, and Hendrix, and everybody. And of course, everybody wanted to come and be with them because they were cool, they were what was happening. And the next thing you know, you had a baker, a banker, a lord, so-and-so, and all of them standing in line to get into the Hard Rock Cafe. And that, to me, if I created anything, it was that, because this whole idea of being special, of being different from somebody else, is all wrong. The second that you start feeling that you want to be better than someone else, that you're special, you've lost the game, in my opinion. I mean, a Christian says he's cooler than a Jew. An Indian says I'm better than a Pakistani. A rich guy says I'm better than a poor guy. I mean, that's crazy. I mean, we know from studying about Sai Baba, and we know in our hearts anyway, that all is one. In fact, that's one of the things that we put up in the Hard Rock, was that message. We put it on thousands of T-shirts, and jackets, and buttons, and matches, and everything else. Because if the Hard Rock was going to become famous, and people were going to go for it, then I wanted to give them a message, to take back with them. Because it was important. You have to give back as much as you get in life. And if you're going to be, turned in other people as something special, you have to guard yourself all the time. The second that you feel like being richer than someone, being, more powerful, having a different position, you're really devaluing, you're going backwards. And so it was really important. I realized when I started my business that, something cool had to be put in there. And something ended up coming from Sai Baba. I had been born into a Christian family, and Southern Baptist, as a matter of fact. And we had, I found it very difficult with the restricted lifestyle that they were laying on us at the time. Because I never really believed Jesus said that. I never believed that he said, I'm the only one, all the other religions are wrong, and everyone's going to burn in hell if they're not a Christian. I think that the Christian church somewhere, to get power over people, so shove that in there a little bit, to frighten people and keep their flock going. That's what I personally believe. But I couldn't believe that God didn't live in India and France and in Asia and every other place. And it was really funny. I bought the rights to a book. It's called The Secret Life of Plants. I'd always been into sort of metaphysical things. I was fascinated with, the unknown things that are sort of really part of nature. And I bought the rights to a book called The Secret Life of Plants. It was all about parapsychology and psychic phenomena. And I bought the theatrical rights to make a film out of it. And it became a bestseller after I bought these rights. And it stayed on the New York Times bestseller list for, I think, 57 weeks. I was 24 years old at the time. And the next thing I knew, they had me out in Hollywood. Warner Brothers wanted to make a motion picture out of it. And it was then that I met Stevie Wonder. He'd read the book, and he was one of the hottest artists at the time. In fact, he became my partner, and we did the film, and he wrote the music. In fact, he has an album called The Secret Life of Plants, the soundtrack for it. But the book is about all these bizarre things, and it's so fascinating. I was lucky to go with the writers around the world to look into all these phenomena. I went to places, first institutions that had parapsychology departments like UCLA, Duke, Johns Hopkins, and then we went down to Mexico, and then to France and Germany, all kinds of bizarre phenomena. There was a guy in Mexico who could take Polaroid film and put it up to his forehead and make any image that you wanted to appear on the film. There was people at UCLA that could visualize what other people were experiencing who were 100 miles away. there were all kinds of bizarre things going on, but there was no explanation. I knew it had something to do with God. I knew it had something to do about something beyond what we were being taught or what we know. And I just kept diving deep into it. It was really a good time for me because in the end, talking to all these institutions and people, they said, well, go to India. That is the home of mysticism. That's the home of all of these phenomena that have occurred over the centuries. And I went to India to visit all the divine masters there and to do research for this film, and it was there that I met Sathya.
Did that movie ever come out there?
Yes, it did. It was on PBS. It was a documentary style film. I think it played on long ago, as a matter of fact. It was a long time ago, 70,000. And it was amazing to me that Sai Baba, this divine master, I wasn't sure at first. I was very unsure. I met other people that said, oh, this is a divine master. I said, well, what's that? I said, well, it's a realized being. He's a man of higher consciousness who is like a walking God-man. He's human. He has all these miraculous powers and can do things. So I went down to see him, and it was at White Fields, a place in Bangalore, that he came. I was sitting at the back of the walls, and I didn't even sit down. I was standing there against the wall. And so I got part of the crowd. He came right up to me. I'd been there about 5 minutes, and I saw him moving his hand before as he walked up to certain people, and they put their hands out, and he materialized this vibhuti, this holy ash. He told me to eat it. That was 1974, I guess. And it was the start of my journey. I guess all of you have started a journey in terms of being in contact with it through your parents, through camps, through going down to the various meetings and so forth. It's really hard to fathom. It's taken me many, many years. In fact, I really didn't consider myself a Sai Baba devotee until 6 months ago, quite frankly. It's taken me that long to really believe and understand that this being is a divine being and that he is everywhere all the time. It's so hard a concept to understand. It's such a difficult thing to believe in. It only comes through time and experience, and the experiences I had that helped me on the way were two really dynamic experiences. Sai Baba I met, he didn't say anything to me except made this vibhuti in 1974. He didn't speak to me again, and I went there every year until 1989. About 15 years before he ever spoke to me. It was funny, I was the sort of joke around the ashram. Everybody goes there, they want to have an interview. Sai Baba is the most important thing in the whole world. And they would, when people were really freaked out and going crazy, they'd wheel me out. They well, here's a guy who's been here for 10 years and he's never even looked at him. It was really funny.
Well, what kept you going? I mean, that might be interesting for the young people to hear. What was the inner drive that kept you?
I knew that there was something more divine going on than myself. I knew that there had to be a creator, and if there was a messenger of God, if there was a possibility to be in contact with someone who could teach me more about God, then I wanted to go back and be near that source. And I felt that Sai Baba was the highest power. I didn't know to what degree. So I kept going back. I kept going back a lot. It was two experiences that I had that really shook me to my bones. One was an experience in 1975 where I fell asleep. I, in fact, had been taking a few drugs that night. And I fell asleep going home at 5 a.m. driving a Porsche car. And the car went over a cliff as I woke up. And as the car went over the cliff, suddenly it started spinning in the air. Sai Baba was sitting next to me. He put his arm around me, and the car went over about 10 or 12 times. The windshield was no more. There was no doors on the car. The roll bar had been bent down below my back. The seat next to me had been blown out. I had no seatbelt on. When the car came to And I got up and walked away from it. And I knew that I had seen him sitting next to me. I knew that he had saved my life. So I went back to India to thank him for saying something to me. Of course, he ignored me and didn't do anything to me at all. Another experience I had was a drug experience where I had gone into an epileptic fit in a hotel room in Denver, Colorado. And I swallowed my tongue. I had no motor response. And I guess the only way I can describe it is that I died. My spirit came out of the top of my head like I read that. And the next thing I was looking down my body, and something in that form that came into my consciousness and said, "You don't have to die. Call your guru's name." And I said, "Well, I guess that's Sai Baba." So I called his name. He appeared in this room in the flesh. Put me on the bed, pulled out my tongue, and pressed on my chest. And when he did, my spirit went back inside my body. When something like that happens, you've got to go back to India to figure out what's going on, because it was such a dynamic experience. And I knew that eventually maybe you'd talk to me or give me a sign or grow me up, which is what I need more than anything else. But, hard rock was a very difficult thing to handle. It took years to get used to it. It was a lot of fun, it was very exciting, but it was also some negative sides to it.
Isaac, could you talk for a minute about why you had to go through the drug period in order to be at the point where you're at now, against some people who don't have to go through the drug period and fortify themselves at the beginning and reach a
Well, I was a wild child. It was a company that I was keeping. It was part of the scene. It was a cool thing to do, and it was very easy for me to get into drinking and taking drugs and things like that. I did it for years. A lot of people around me didn't. And I think it was that important. It's hard to make that decision. I'm not advocating taking drugs at all, but I think it's part of the experience you go through today. Everybody has drugs. Your parent, I'm sure, would be shocked. All of you, most of you, have probably seen drugs at your school or something like that. It's all part of the scene. It really robs you, I think, now, while you're taking it out. It robs you of time. It robs you of a connection to your higher self. And it's just part of growing up. But you have to be very careful because they're so powerful that you think that you're using them. In the end, I found that they control you. You can't control you. And we all know this when some friends get harmed by the things they can do. It's a very, very powerful experience. It's not something I recommend, but if you're going through that experience, you must be very, very careful. It's powerful. Anyway, I was blessed that 3 years ago, Sai Baba called me in, and it's sort of interesting. He said two things to me. One of the things I've done, I've gone out of the ashram one day, there's a tiny sign that said, "Love all, serve all." And I thought that this really fit what I believed about everybody. That was part of my nature. I just had to use it in my business, so I put it on matches and buttons and all the hard rocks and so forth and so on. And 15 years later, Sai Baba calls me in for an interview, and the first thing he asked me was, "Where's God?" Now, if you haven't had an interview for 15 years and Sai Baba calls you in, it's a very frightening experience because he's so amazing. And I sort of thought about it for a minute, and I said, "Well, he's in my heart." And he said, "No." He said, "God is everywhere." He said, "It's like a fish swimming through water. The water is above the fish, around the fish, below the fish, inside the fish." He said, "You are a fish swimming through God." And it's something that alone really makes much sense to me because he is everywhere. It's hard because there's this whole thing that man has always sort of really gotten off the path on, I think, and that's this feeling of duality. That God's over there and I'm over here. Or he's some cat with a big chair with a long white beard. Or that he is in India and walks around in this little body and opens hospitals and schools and stuff like that. God is everywhere. I mean, one of the great examples of this was a woman that I had a good party once. His name was Gary Bells. And Gary had been there for about 2 weeks. It was his first visit there. And he said, look, there's no doubt about it, Isaac. Sai Baba is a divine being. He has amazing powers. But I just don't understand this omniscience business. How can he be everywhere at once? How is that possible? And I related to him these two stories I just told you. I said, look, I've had these two experiences, death experiences, where he's literally arrived at the nick of time, somehow knowing that I was in danger and pulled me back from death. So even though I've had those experiences, I can't comprehend the omniscient experience. I don't understand it. It's beyond my comprehension. And he said, well, I just can't. I said, well, don't worry about it. Go on to bed. And he went to bed that night. And about 3 o'clock in the morning, this guy's waking me up. And he says, oh, Isaac, you're not going to believe it. I just had this amazing dream. It was more like a visitation. That Sai Baba was here. He had my mother and father sitting in chairs on one side. He had my wife and children sitting on this side. And he materialized his lathe, and then he put it on my head. He gave me this whole lecture on enlightenment. I said, it was incredible. It was like he was really here. And it was like 3 o'clock in the morning. He put the party. I said, oh, great, Gary, great. I said, going back to bed, man. And the next morning we got up, and we went down to the brush, and Sai Baba came by, and he said, you two, inside. So we go inside, and Sai Baba sits us down in front of him, and he turns to my face, Gary, and he said, last night you had a dream about me. I had your mother and father sitting on this side. I had your children sitting on this side. I materialized a lathe and put it on around your neck. I gave you a lecture on enlightenment. And you got so excited you woke up. Then you woke up Tigrett and told him all about it. I know, I was there. And when you have this amazing experience once again, that he is not only, he's in your dreams, he's in reality, he's in many dimensions, really. It sort of brings home the fact that he is watching, he is here all the time. And I guess that's how he was able to save me from my own death. And has saved many, many, many other people from time to time. He's truly, truly done everything. And I believe that he has been the secret of the success of my life, my business, and Hard Rock. Without a doubt, the Hard Rock is his. Yes, sir.
How did you get the money in the first place to open Hard Rock?
I worked in some factories in northern England. I didn't even graduate from high school. I did that for about a year and a half. I saved up 400 English pounds.
That's all it cost to open a restaurant?
No, you sort of missed the story. I told it just a little bit earlier. I know I bought an old English car. And I went by with my mother. And I took it back to the States, and the guy offered me 10 times what it was worth. I sold it to him. I discovered a window in the market. I went back and I bought 5 more, then I bought 8 more. The last trip I bought about 15. I was about 19 at the time. I ended up with about $200,000.
Wow.
That's how it all started. Sai Baba told me something very interesting. He said that the Hard Rock was an oasis of light in the sea of darkness. Now, I can only say that, there are some very negative sides to rock and roll, and I have certainly experienced all of them. And I always wondered whether I was doing the right thing, whether it was a good thing that it was really serving him. But the Hard Rock brought so much pleasure to people, and I think it really was a beacon of light. I don't think it makes a difference what you do. And as long as you're doing it dharmically, it's righteously, purely, it doesn't make a difference what you do. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question that during maybe the first years that you were running Hard Rock and you maybe had a wilder lifestyle, were you a rock devotee? And if you were, how did you balance maybe the lifestyle that you were leading the rock and roll?
It was really great difficulty. I think Baba was just the fact that he was there. It's hard to think about it all the time. It's hard to think about doing the right thing. Life is so exciting, things are happening, But no matter what I did, I always came back to thinking about him. And when I thought about him, then I thought, well, maybe I should have changed a little this, a little that. Maybe I'd go too far here or there. But it is a balance. It's a balance completely. I think that's why it comes into our lives, to help balance out the deep end. left down this way.
I know when we get into car, we switch, the music on and our parents, they don't like the music on in the car. And they just turn the music we like. Does Bob say anything about?
Well, every generation has its music, its lifestyle, and all these kind of things. What's happened is getting pretty dramatic. 30s, 40s, 50s generations were all pretty much the same. Even before that, in the 20s, the turn of the century, there's very little change. Everything stayed the same. Suddenly, we're in this amazing time where things are changing dynamically all the time. And what happens is that the parents are terrified. If you're not, they were brought up to be like their parents. Parents tend to want to bring you up to be like them, to give you their values and this and that, and all this stuff. In the end, these times are moving so fast that the music that we listen to is totally different from the music they were listening to. And it frightens them. And it's only natural that it would to a certain degree. You sort of have to bring your parents up a little bit and forgive them and that sort of thing. But I understand that phenomenon. It's a common one today. It's just that I think they're frightened by it. It's hard for them to get into it. It's not their music, it's just a generation. It causes something called a generation gap, and it causes a lack of communication. I had and Jimi Hendrix at 9 out of 10 every day was enough to drive crazy. That's right.
Did you open the first Hard Rock Cafe in England? Was that the first one? Was that the first Hard Rock Cafe that was opened in
In
England?
London in 1971. Yes, sir.
What's your view on hard rock and some of the satanic lyrics and different things that, like Led Zeppelin albums going in reverse and having different messages encoded and things like that? How did you view that?
I think that there are negative things that can happen. I like hard rock music. Led Zeppelin, really Willie Dixon songs, this whole Blues story, Blues Barn. I think that some heavy metal can put you into an oblivious state and start driving you crazy. I think it's very, music is very powerful. We all like to dance. We put on music, and I'm sure all of the dance to the storm up and down the stairs and everywhere else. Sometimes the music, I think, bring out some negative aspects, some more primal aspects. I think you have to be really careful. But yeah, there are many negative things. Satanic, I think maybe is taking it a bit too far. There's certainly, you can bring out the devil in you if you're not careful. Anybody else with any questions? Yes, ma'am.
When you sold the Hard Rock Cafe, did you specify that it had to stay exactly the same as you set it up?
No, I didn't.
Because I'm curious why Bob's picture is still up on the wall.
Well, I'm sure that's up to him. I don't think that he would allow. When I put the picture up there in 1974, when I got back, he said, "This is my man," and I put the picture up there. The whole side community was outraged. You can't do that. That's horrible. Hard rock, and all that stuff. He doesn't like that sort of thing. Well, God is everywhere. He doesn't just hang out in certain places. He's everywhere because and I always felt that it was a positive thing. And I always felt that it was giving darshan to young people, and it has. I mean, those pictures, I guess, today, 50 million people have seen those pictures. It was my own way trying to help Swami to make contact with a lot of people through something like music.
It's very moving to go inside. I was taken in by another devotee, and I didn't know that the picture was going to be there, and I had tears in my eyes.
Have you been to Hard Rock in New York?
Yes, 57.
Well, that was the most bizarre thing I think I ever did. You notice the God wall there with all the icons on it? I mean, that was...
And the Cougaran.
Yeah. Well, we're all, it's such a crazy world. We're all trying to decide what it is that we want to follow. There's all kinds of modern gods. Money, is something that I think a lot of people worship. So I wanted to put something up on the wall. It's a huge wall for those of you who have been in Hard Rock in New York. I want to have all the gods represented. There's a big Om sign up there. There's a Madonna and Child representing Christianity. There it is. Pardon me?
The Star of David.
Indeed, a beautiful star. These are huge things that's going to fortune making these days. And I thought, that's great, but that's not enough. There are other modern icons, demagogues, that people worship today. One of them was money. So I put up a huge cruiser, and that thing is actually gilded. It cost $45,000 to make that cruiser. And it's about 8 feet wide, I reminted the coin at the bottom. It says, "Is this what you want?" You know, I thought drugs were a very important thing. So I put up a huge quaalude. We used to take something called quaaludes. So I put up this huge quaalude. It's 4 feet in diameter. There's little signs in the corner that says lust, greed, anger, and hatred, because I think that's what drugs can bring out of you. That's an extreme way. And in the middle of the Kruger, in the middle of this quaalude, there's a little neon sign that says victim. Because I think that's the calling of drugs. In the middle of all of this, you can imagine what the Psy community thought of me. In the middle of all of this, I have Sai Baba's picture with Omega sign, which is an ancient Greek symbol. And on the Omega sign, it says, "Who do you love?" Because I wanted people to have a choice. What is it? You make a choice. Is it drugs? Is it money? You know, what is it that you're after? Just to make it think. In other words, give a message back. You know, and I think that it did have a good effect on a lot of people. While they had that, they grow up. I knew it was size energy. Yes, sir.
Yeah, in the beginning, what attracted all the celebrities to come to Hard Rock?
It was the first three-dimensional home that really made heroes, a place where the heroes, first of all, were immortalized. I mean, the first thing I put up, in fact, it was given to me by Eric Clapton back in the early 70s. No one had ever immortalized rock and roll stars. And he came into the Hard Rock, he gave me this guitar. I mean, he was my god. I just couldn't believe it. He'd give me one of the guitars. I put it up on the wall, and everybody said, "God, that's so cool, that's amazing, incredible." Well, all the music industry people hung out there, and the next thing I knew, 2 weeks later, Townsend's guitar roadie. And he has a guitar, and I'll open up this thing, and it's his Les Paul, his custom right-off tour, and this little note from Pete says, "Mine's as good as his." So I said, "Well, that is pretty cool. I think I'll put this one up too." And the next thing I knew, the artists were giving me all kinds of fabulous things, because it was the first time anyone had immortalized them and created a place where all these famous things of the culture could be put up. And they came in on a regular basis. You know, this was their home. It was really all about their culture, and it was very, very exciting. It was very, very exciting. Yes,
Did they ever ask you about Sai Baba?
yes. Many, many people have asked me about Sai Baba. I guess it's been one of the things that kept me sane through it all, because when you stand at the bar drinking the beer, thinking some kind of insane thought, somebody said, "Who is that?" Oh, yes. That's Sai Baba, you know. I mean, it kept me in line, so you just have him around and make him a part of the business. And I feel blessed because it's just been so exciting. Everyone thinks religion is so serious, and it's not. Sai Baba is not serious. He is the funniest guy I've ever met. He is. He's hilarious. He's so funny with kids and jokes. He wants you to be moral. He wants you to act right. He wants to teach you. But, he's not asking you to lock yourself away from the world to do so. It's impossible. That's not really good. Yes, ma'am.
What do you say to people when they ask you who is?
Well, it's very difficult. I've had trouble asking myself who he is for many, many years. Now I believe that I know him as an avatar, a divine being incarnated in human form. That's really hard for people to swallow. So most of the time I say, well, it's a great holy name. Because, God calls people at their own time, when it's right for them. Some people don't discover a religion until they're faced with death when they're 60 years old. And they say, "Oh, I'm going to die, I better pray." And some people find it when they're very, very young. I have to be lucky that I found it at a very young age. It's a journey. The whole religious experience is a journey. It's very exciting. especially if you're lucky to come in contact with this divine being, is absolutely fantastic. Yes, sir.
My parents just got back from India, and their experience there, like, they had someone like go through a reading of my father's life and how he was just coming out of a phase of his life that was focused on like materialism, but this was all part of his karma because his other lives had added up to that. He would have a good life this time. And they talked about how now in the years to come that he's going to focus on spirituality for himself and just how everything would turn, I guess, more towards God and what he needs to in that area. And I was wondering, like, being a young person, I know a lot about, let's say, Baba and his teachings, and I don't know. And then I have on the other side about, like, a thirst for experience or living, and I find it hard to understand, like, where I want to go, and I don't want it to interfere with like my spirituality or my philosophy. And it seems like you have been through a lot, and like I can draw a parallel to my father's life where you had this experience dealing with business and making money and doing what you wanted, and now you're older and you're coming out of it, and you can look back and that's all of what taught you everything that you know today. But how will a young person approach like building his life in a way that they don't
it's so
really look
funny.
back?
People say, "Oh, Sai Baba doesn't like money. That's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Sai Baba doesn't like people that has money. Sai Baba doesn't approve of this or that." Sai Baba is everywhere. All you have to do, you can have $10 million, you can have $10. It doesn't make any difference. It's what you do with it. The thing you don't want to become is greedy and selfish. Who wants to be greedy and selfish? I don't. I think that's a spiritual thing. Having money, there's nothing wrong with having money. It's what you do with it. It's how you use it. I was blessed to make a lot of money. I set a goal for myself. I said, I'm going to take half of everything I have and I'm going to give it to Sai Baba. When I sold my company, I took half of everything I had and I helped him build his hospital. It was part of the thing that motivated me to do something, to use it to help others. You don't have to separate your daily life from your spiritual life. They're one and the same. Sai Baba says work is worship. We have to think about it. It's like the fruits of your labor are you. To me, the whole attitude I had towards business was that business is, in fact, money is a byproduct of doing something you enjoy really well. It was at the end of the chain. I felt really great that it was just a byproduct of what I was doing. I was doing what I enjoyed. It was a lot of fun, and money came down the line. A lot of people get it mixed up, I think. Like money is the whole thing. That's the reason to work, the reason to do everything, and whatever you have to do to get the money is important. I think that even I didn't know what I was doing at the time, but I think really I was practicing a spiritual sadhana in a way by keeping that attitude in my business. Sai Baba is delighted for you to make as much money as you possibly can. Money is not evil. It's what you do with it. It can go on. Yes, sir.
You lesson on the family and
My family? It's really tough on that one particularly. My mother is a strict Christian, and I have great respect for her because, as the Bible says, follow your own chosen God. Sai Baba is not saying follow me, follow me. He says follow your own chosen God, but follow that God and the teachings of that God. The same spirit that is in Sai Baba, I believe, in Jesus Christ and Buddha and Rama and Krishna and all those others. It is a really, really difficult one. It just so happens that my wife was married to one of the Beatles, and his name was Ringo, and she, George Harrison was another one of the Beatles. George was over and has met Sai Baba several times, and George met Sai Baba one time. He made this photograph and said, "Give it to Maureen." yes, my wife, and gave it to Maureen. She had this photograph on her mantelpiece when I walked into her house in 1976. I couldn't believe that Sai Baba's picture was there. I said, who's a devotee of Sai Baba? And this was the lady of the house. She was divorced from her husband at that time. And had just gotten divorced. And we sat down and started talking about Sai Baba and fell madly in love while we were talking about Sai. So it was a Sai wedding right there. And that was great. But my father, for instance, who is a Christian as well and goes to church, and that's great too. And it was really, really interesting. In fact, the lady was just talking about her children, and she came to children and all this other stuff. And I was saying, well, you know, my father just came to India for the first time to see this hospital. And it was really great. I didn't expect it, but Sai Baba actually called us in for an interview. And my father went up and put his arm around Sai Baba and said, oh, thank you, Mr. Baba, for taking good care of my son. And Sai Baba looked at him and he said, not your son, my son. And that, I think, is one of the problems that a lot of parents have. I mean, you will have children one day, all of you. I have a 5-year-old daughter now, and you feel like that, you know, this has been given to you to take care of for God. You bring it up the best way you can, but time comes, you've got to cut them loose. And that's very difficult for most parents to do. It's very, very difficult. You got to be very patient with it. Or run. Yes, sir.
Have you ever had any Sai devotees come and meet you to talk about Sai?
Sure. Oh goodness. Yeah, I just started. Sai Baba asked me to start talking to Sai groups and doing that sort of thing, and I just started doing that recently. But lots of people who have seen that picture in Hard Rock have come and said, you must tell me more. Some of us, I think, see that picture and recognize that this is a divine being. Some of us don't. Those that are in need, I think, some explanation, well, come along. I mean, you'll have a picture in your house when your buddy will say, you know, who is that? You have 6 friends don't even want to be interested. Who's that? Who's that? I think it's Sai's own miraculous way of bringing people around you. Yes, sir.
Earlier you had mentioned the House of Beauty.
Yes.
Could you discuss that?
Yes. I'm going back into business. I sold my business when I was part of the American Stock Exchange with the Hard Rock Cafe and also the London Stock Exchange. And then Sai Baba brought a man to me who offered me too much money. It was 20 years to the day, and he offered me a miraculous $108 million. I sold the business now. Is that a lot? It goes fast, let me tell you. At any rate, that's the money. That's a lot of that money. In fact, half of that money went into establishing hospitals. A lot of it also went to the government. I trust the rest of my family. I went to the environmental business. I became an environmentalist. I had been interested for some time. I started an environmental group in England called ARC. And ARC was started with Sting and Chrissy Hine and Paul and Linda McCartney and Peter Gabriel and a whole bunch of people like that. And it was very exciting. We brought the first environmentally friendly products on the English market. Because of my experience with Hard Rock, I knew how to market that. This was at Charity. And I did that for about 2 years, and then I went on to work in the United Nations for another environmental group, which was called the Global Forum of Spiritual and Parliamentary Leaders. We had the Dalai Lama was part of that group, Mother Teresa, spiritual leaders from all over the world, parliamentarians, and that sort of thing. I thought, well, this is great. I'll just do good works for the rest of my life in this way, and I guess I go back to work. Well, so I was sitting up on the veranda at a blue party, and I was thinking to myself, God, Love All, Serve All was such an amazing part of my career. I wonder if I ever did get back into business again, what the slogan would be. I was sitting there thinking about it, and someone tapped me on my shoulder. I looked up, it was Sai Baba. And he said, help ever, hurt never. And I went, oh my God, he's not going to get me back in business again either. And for 2 days, I thought, well, that was just a coincidence. And I was thinking about it, about few days later, I told him, God, you know, if I had a little cool restaurant or a single, I'd probably be blues oriented, and I need a slogan, and then someone tapped me on the back, and he'd come around through the main pier, and he said, help ever, hurt never. And I said, oh my goodness, he can't be serious. He really wants me to go back to work doing this on the work. So I was blessed about 2 or 3 months later when I was back on another trip, had an interview with him. I said, do you want me to go back into this business? And he said, yes, I do. And so I drew some plans up, and I took them to him, and he just recently blessed them. He said, yes, you need to do this. But he said the Hard Rock was a high school, now you're in college. So it's very interesting. I'm opening a chain of live music venues based on blues and rhythm and blues basis for rock and roll. These are all the incredible Delta blues stars from Robert Johnson, Dave Mount Brown, Sonny Boy Williamson, which are historical, down to Howlin' Wolf and Muddy Waters, and they're the ones that influenced Led Zeppelin and Clapton and so forth. And it's called the House of Blues. It'll be 3 things. It'll be it's an old clapboard house. Looks like it's falling down from Mississippi or Tennessee, which is my home area. Inside of it, there'll be a 200-seat restaurant, which is called a BB Blues Bar. It's called BB because I've got my rights from Danny Aykroyd and John Belushi's estate for the Blues Brothers name, image, and likeness. So BB stands for Blues Brothers. There'll also be a 500-seat live music venue, which will be based on blues, rhythm and blues, and for dancing. And there's also a store which will sell records and tapes and books and other things like that. And Cy Bob has blessed his process. He said, you do that. So I'm going to do that. I don't know if it'll be successful, but the main thing is serving his will. And I hope you'll all come. It should be a great place. Yes, ma'am.
When you became a study buddy, did you feel like this about the Hard Rock Cafe during the lockdown?
I beg your pardon?
When you became a study buddy, did you feel like this about the Hard Rock Cafe when you weren't one?
Well, it always confused me a little bit because I thought, am I doing the wrong thing? Is this, because there are negative sides to it. I talk a little bit about heavy metal music and the drugs and all that sort of thing, which are part of pop culture. I wasn't sure if I was doing the right thing. I was confused. As I told you, I'd taken Love All, Serve All is One, and many other side slogans and made it part of my business. And I was quite serious about it. I got up every week and would talk to all the folks that worked with me about it and how important it was. I was still confused up until, I guess, my first interview with Cy Bob. This Love All, Serve All had already been on 40 million matches, buttons, all the jackets that we sold. Somebody made it seem Love All, Serve All. That's the motto of the business and the heartfelt way we're running it. I told you the first question Cy Bob asked me about where is God, and of course I missed that one. So the second question he said was, how do you get to God? And I didn't say anything. I already missed one. I didn't want to miss another one. And he asked this guy, how do you get to God? And he asked this fellow, and he came back to me and he said, how do you get to God? And I said like that. He said, love all, serve all. So I knew then, in fact, I burst into tears. I knew that he'd been with me throughout the whole career. And that's when he told me that the Hard Rock had been an oasis of light, a sea of darkness. So I'm excited about it. God is everywhere. It's how you do this. You can be a street sweeper. You can be a big stockbroker. You can be a nurse. You can be whatever you want to be. But it's how you do it. It's not important what you are. It's how you do it. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
I'm not sure if you heard about it, but there's this one movie called God of the Ages. God of the Ages.
Yes.
And did you hear of it?
No, I haven't.
Okay,
Is this a group?
No, it's a movie about God's Sinai and all.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And they're Christians that are scared that Hinduism is taking over Christianism or something like that. And they're trying to show that Jews and Chinese and stuff are the crazy people and stuff, and that they want people to join their own religion, not other people's. So what do you think you can do about that?
Well, you can start by praying for them. This is the most ancient problem that man has ever had. Again, this is what cultures have done. They're scared of each other, they fight each other. Again, it goes back to this feeling of special. We're special. We've got the answer. We're better than that. I mean, it's an unfortunate part of the nature of sociology that one religion will fight another. Even in Mother India, we have Hindus fighting, Muslims, and there's religious wars have destroyed mankind forever. It is this type of misinformation that causes these type of wars. Baba has said all names are the same. All these divine masters have come into cultures at certain periods of history. Jesus was around at a certain time. Buddha was around at a certain time. Krishna was around at a certain time. Muhammad was around at a certain time. They were all divine masters. Entire religions formed around them. It was all the same spirit. It's when man gets involved culturally and believes that he's better than someone else that everything goes crazy. And it's very, very sad. But religion should be a personal thing, not a political thing. I mean, the second that you start mixing politics and religion, you're going to have a fight. And that is what happens here. I mean, it's so interesting that Sai Baba in his previous incarnation was a Muslim. And of course, at Shirdi Sai, he announced, I will be born again into a Hindu family 8 years after he died. And the Muslims around him were outraged that he would be a Hindu, next life. Even as their master is sitting there. I mean, it's an unfortunate part of life. But it is, I think, one of the things that Sai Baba has come for. Sai Baba has said, avatars come when man is off the track. Put him back on. This vibration alone will steer mankind back into righteous ways. That's why they come. And I think we're very blessed. It's a very dark age that we live right now. We're so drawn to the five senses: lust, greed, anger, hatred, rule more people than peace and love. Don't worry about it. Listen.
Did you start believing in Swami after you opened Heart Cafe?
Well, I always felt that there was a divine nature in people that I love. I thought love was divine itself. It's so powerful. And I just didn't have a definition for it. Sai Baba came after the Hard Rock had opened, but he had been the answer I've been looking for. Although it took a long time to really get into the whole thing. It didn't happen overnight. It takes time. And it really takes a relationship. So the amazing thing about him is that everybody has a personal relationship. He doesn't like it through someone else. It's one-on-one. And it's fantastic. It really takes time.
If there's one thing that you could say that's made a difference in your life, and all of us sitting here trying to make a decision about whether or not to follow Sai, what would it be?
Well, I think you follow your heart. And my heart led me to Sai Baba. Maybe someone else's heart will lead them to Christ, or someone else will. As Sai Baba has said, follow your own chosen God. Sai Baba is not a cult following. Sai Baba does not interfere with your free will. Sai Baba is not interested in establishing a new religion. That I know from being around him 18 years. He's never interfered with my free will, nor have any of the people that's been around. He has led me into belief more into Jesus Christ, which is the family that I came out of originally. I would just say that, we are all lucky to have an influence. There's a divine being, like a Christ, like a Buddha, who's actually walking on the planet right now. And through your parents, or through these associations, or whatever, you're given a glimpse of it. That's great. It may hopefully lead you to find your own spirituality. Yes, sir.
In the new House of the Blues, are you going to be adding the same wall that you did in Hard Rock Cafe?
No, it's totally different, as a matter of fact. I have a wonderful artist that Sai Baba has blessed for this project. It's great to have a divine partner. And he is, we're actually doing these incredible reliefs because part of this history, rock and roll started in 1954. The blues started in the cotton fields of Mississippi at the turn of the century. The first blues song, published blues song, was published by W.C. Handy in 1906. But it's a long educational process. I mean, what the blues are is the poetic history of the Afro-American experience. I mean, it's powerful stuff. And part of bringing the blues out, because there's a resurgence of the blues, what's happening right now, is education. So we are going to, on the ceiling of this structure, this artist has done these amazing reliefs of all the artists, and their names and dates, their songs that they made famous and so forth will be immortalized on the ceiling. It's a different thing than the hard rock. I wouldn't never be the same thing. Yes, ma'am. The first one will open in Harvard Square at Harvard University in Cambridge, Massachusetts.
Where in Harvard Square?
Where in Harvard Square? It's a surprise. You'll hear about it. And in fact, Aerosmith is a partner of ours.
Really? I can't remember.
Yeah, sure. And ZZ Top is a partner as well, for those that like ZZ Top. A couple of actors, Danny Aykroyd is a partner. River Phoenix is a partner as well, and several other characters. So, the first will be in Harvard Square in Cambridge. The second one will be in New Orleans, Louisiana, in the French Quarter, on Decatur Street. And the third will be on the Sunset Strip in Los Angeles.
So you have no intentions of opening around here yet?
Pardon me?
You have no intentions of opening around here yet, right?
Well, Cambridge is pretty close. I don't know. I had such a bout in New York. New York is such a tough town. Boy, it just got wore me out. I don't know if I can do it. Any other questions from anyone? Yes, sir.
How many Hard Rocks were there when you sold?
Let's see. I had a partner originally. That partner and I split up in 1978. I bought him out of the London Hard Rock, and I licensed him to do Hard Rock cafes west of the Mississippi River, except for Dallas. I took everything east of the river, Mississippi, and the rest of the world. I'd opened up Hard Rocks in London, Reykjavik, Iceland, Stockholm, Tokyo, Cancun, Mexico, New York, Dallas, construction in Washington, Boston, and New Orleans,
Singapore?
Singapore, Orlando. Sydney, Australia was the only place I gave my book. It gives me Orlando.
Orlando?
Oh, there's one. There's a ripoff in Amsterdam, and there's a ripoff in Toronto.
Is there one in Montego Bay? In Jamaica?
Did you say Germany?
Yeah, there's one in Montego Bay. All the t-shirts say Roster Rock and stuff. Maybe.
Maybe. I've been out there.
It's small, it's like kind of.
Probably a ripoff.
That's
We
what
haven't had much everywhere.
It's really small.
We're not bringing the fires all the time.
What do you think in idea with the blues?
The House of Blues, the BB Blues Bar, and the live music blues called Blues Basement, and the store, which is the new stores called Take It Easy Baby, and roll some of the world hits song. And that first one will open the end of September at Harvard Square. Besides Christmas. Yes, sir.
Now, hopefully this will be a big success. I don't know, we have long lines, is there any way that they can circumvent that line?
Let me tell you that you and them. No, it's pleasure, sure. That's all. One of the things that we always did, we set up soup kitchens as part of combining the two worlds. We set up a soup kitchen wherever we had a Hard Rock cafe. We fed homeless women and children in New York City for a number of years. And our staff volunteered every week. We did the same thing in Dallas, London, and other places in New York. That's how you balance it out. Yes, sir.
Is there going to be a picture of swarming and Lackawanna Cafe?
If you will allow me to put it up, yes, it will be. Absolutely. Any other questions? Great. Well, listen, I appreciate y'all listening to me.